Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and today's guest is Ressel Yu, who is a personal friend of mine. She is a Marconics energy teacher and practitioner. She also founded Junior Healers Academy, and she really is so gifted in all things energy alchemy, which I can't wait to deep dive into. But first, we share a common history of having Asian Catholic parents. And that was kind of the main thing I wanted to focus on today, even though we are, soul sisters, and there's so many great things we could talk about in the quantum, which we can do a little bit later if we have time or another podcast. But welcome, Ressel, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm excited to have this
so excited to have you. I wanted to ask you, because I know you've shared some things about your childhood that were really difficult. And I wanted to ask you, at what age were you aware that, things were very uncomfortable emotionally and physically in your life, in your childhood?
That's an interesting question, because I don't know that there was really an age where I recognized that it was uncomfortable, because all my whole life was uncomfortable. So I didn't know what it felt like to be at peace until later in life, when I was
that felt normal to you then. That was just normal.
Exactly. The abuse was normal. The negative self-talk was normal. And so when I went out of that place and into more of a situation or experience where I was feeling happy, like authentically happy and at peace and joy, that's when I recognized it. So I guess, to answer your question a long way around, I probably didn't recognize that until I was in my 40s. And I'm like 50 years old now. So
wow. Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. I know that our parents repeat what they learn. A lot of their lack of coping tools or their parenting comes from the way they were raised. And it can be really difficult because they don't really have an awareness or a higher consciousness around the impact that those programs and patterning are having on us as kids. And as children, we don't really have the capacity to process or deal with what's happening to us in a healthy way. I wasn't physically abused, but I certainly had a lot of programs that were passed down to me from the Asian and Catholic culture that were very limiting and painful for me to work through. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I know there was a lot of physical violence. And was that from like a very early age, like a toddler, or?
My first recollection of it was when I was probably around 8 years old. And we grew up very poor. My parents moved here from the Philippines, and they struggled. They hustled, they worked hard to get food on the table, roof over our head. And so I remember this one incident when, I don't know if anybody here remembers cream of wheat. I don't know. Okay. And my mom didn't put any sugar or any flavoring. It was just hot water and the grains. And I couldn't eat it. Like, I would start gagging because it was so disgusting. And I remember, and this is interesting too, because at that point I started associating money with abuse. Like, money is bad, because she kept saying to me, it costs a lot of money to get there. We don't have a lot of money, so you better eat it. And because I didn't eat it, she would smack me, like physically abuse me with like a belt, or slap me across the face. And so at age 8, I associated money as being evil, an evil thing.
Wow, that's a huge negative association. with something so critical to our survival, right?
Exactly.
Abundance.
And it made sense because as I grew up in life, I struggled financially. Even after I got married, there was always financial burdens because it was programmed in my mind that money is not a good thing and that you work hard for it and it's still not going to be enough. And if you
Not
don't get enough,
enough.
there's going to be abuse, there's going to be bad things that
Wow.
result from it. So so yeah, I mean, it started at age 8, and you would think that the amount of abuse that I would go through, and it was probably on a weekly basis,
Mhm.
that I would have been very timid,
Subdued.
exactly, very passive, and in some ways I was passive, but when I hit my teenage years, I became very brazen.
It was like game on.
It, it was. I'm so embarrassed. If my mom is watching this, I am so sorry. But because she'd be like, yeah, that was her. Um, instead of backing off, I would challenge. I would question things, and I think that that's what helped me get out of that situation because I did have that awareness, that mindfulness at a younger age to challenge those things. And when you bring it back to Catholicism, we are taught these things, right, that aren't necessarily truth, but we are forced to think it's true. And I would
You
get
don't
in
have a
trouble.
choice either.
You don't.
I
And
used to ask questions and they're like, you do not question.
oh
This.
no, yeah, the nun would be over. It's like, sister, you're like freaking out. It's like, I'm questioning this, and like, you're not supposed to question that. I'm like, really? Why? Why can't I question
More
that?
questions.
Yeah, exactly. It was not good. Sunday school was never fun for me. Going to church was never fun because at that age, even in my 10 years old, it didn't feel right.
It didn't resonate for me either. Like,
Yeah.
and the hard part is, it's really hard to be a square peg in a round hole.
That's right.
Because I knew in my soul that this wasn't aligned for me.
Yeah.
But I had no choice. I had to go to catechism. I had to get communion. I had to get confirmed. I had to go to all these things that I hated going to. And I had to go to confession every Saturday. And then I had to go to church on Sunday. And I hated it. I hated every moment of it. And I know that your rebellion was very difficult for your mom to handle. And yes. I just need you to tell the story about the exorcism.
Oh, yes. Okay. I don't even remember how old I was, but I had confided, you think you can trust your parents, right? Not always. And I would tell them that I see, I'm talking to these things that are in my room, and they go in there and there's nothing there, right? And I'm like, they're right there. And so they would hear me talking to no one, like my imaginary friends. And so one day the priest came over. I remember Father Benito, and he comes over, and my parents like, Ressel, we're going to do a house blessing today. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I didn't realize that we were going to do this. And rather than going around the house only, Father Benito would be like taking holy water and dousing me with it. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, doing the sign of the cross. And I'm like, what's happening here? And I was like soaking wet, but nothing happened, obviously, because I wasn't possessed.
Right.
I had a gift. And right. I realized, oh, maybe what I have is not a gift. Maybe it's a bad thing, because now they have the priest coming over to pull this demon out of me. And I quickly just shut that down. And even though I would have other experiences with sensing spirit and seeing spirit or hearing spirit, I never told anyone. And so it was like this silent struggle growing up, because I didn't know how to completely shut it down. And so I just walk through life and I'm hearing this and I'm seeing this and it's like, okay, that's not real. That's not real. And I remember going to bed and wondering if I was going to be woken up by a spirit, right? And I lived in fear for so long until I decided to just embrace it and take charge of it.
What do you think was the tipping point for you to allow yourself to come fully forward? Because I know when we have gifts, like I never said a word
Oh, you're so smart.
to my family. I did not. Like I knew
They would get
there would be no acceptance of that. And even when I came out, which was recent, maybe 2014, 2015, I started to broach the topic.
Wow.
It was not well received.
Really?
No. But it took me that long. I was in my 40s to start to really take ownership of my abilities, my gifts, who I truly am, my authentic self coming forward. Because, my whole life, I dimmed my light.
Yeah.
Don't draw attention. Don't say anything that's out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But that's what we're told. Yeah.
Because, don't you feel like our whole lives, we're always fighting to belong and to be loved and
accepted
and accepted? Like we fight so hard, and what we don't realize, because we're never given any sort of mentoring or modeling, is that we're here to be ourselves. We're only taught that we need to conform, stay quietly in the box, and do what we're told. And you're so much like me, because compliance is not a thing.
I don't know what that means.
I know, we're just kind of rebels, So I kind of feel like we're really, it was really bold that we were able to kind of come forward and face the wrath of our parents or the disapproval by being who we are meant to be. What was the turning point for you?
I think the turning point was when, because I have 3 boys, my middle one, because of my old programming and conditioning, I could have been a better mother. I could have been a better person. And my middle child decided he didn't want to live with us, didn't want to live with me anymore. And he decided to go, because I was married before, and he decided to go live with his dad. And I was so depressed and I felt like such a failure, right? That I asked myself, like, is this it? Is this as good as it gets? And so I remember, because I was still praying at that time, right? And I asked, like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Is this it? What do I do? And I was given a book. It was actually a video too. I don't know if you've heard of The Secret.
Yeah.
And that was my gateway into spirituality and the unconscious mind. And I remember reading the book and I thought, oh gosh, is it really that simple to just think something and then it happens? So I tried it for like 6 months. I totally failed at that. Did not get anything, did not manifest nothing. Right? I'm like, that sucks. But what I realized, because I didn't stop there. I didn't stop it, because I failed, I was going to retreat. No, I kept moving forward. I'm like, then there's something I'm missing.
You're a fighter. You're like, I'm a
total fighter. I'm like, no, I know that I'm on the right path. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I started really deep diving into The Secret. And I found the secret that The Secret didn't tell you. And it's not the conscious thoughts that we think, it's our unconscious mind that really program and bring to us our experiences. So my middle son leaving me, that was my catalyst to really start finding my alignment, my true self, and reconnecting with the gifts that were given to me that I had shut off or denied. And it was just like a trail of breadcrumbs. You know, the secret led me to crystals. The crystals led me to quantum energy. That led me to Marconics, right? And so, in a roundabout way, I mean, that's how I got here, is because of that horrible experience of losing my middle boy, you know. But I think our higher selves put us in those situations so that we can reach for something higher than ourselves, right? And now look at me, I'm here with you. So how awesome is that?
Well, I know we share a similar path in that we had a lot to unpack, and it required a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And one thing that Asians don't do is vulnerability.
No.
Okay.
That's right.
That's basically, you're the weakest link and you're a failure. And if you're a failure, you're not loved. So that is something that is not, that's pretty prevalent, I think, with our background, that we're programmed never to be vulnerable, never to let our guard down, always be on point, always look on point, and you know how to show up.
Exactly. And
Show up
nobody
as you're
knows your
expected.
business. If you are having a bad day, nobody knows it. If you're struggling, nobody knows it. You do not ask for help.
Ever.
Asking for help is a sign of weakness. And then because you have to ask for help, then they're going to start, you know, talking about you and all these other things. So you're really isolated.
It's such a lonely road. And I'm speaking to all of you kids and adults who know what we're talking about, because if you've been raised in the Asian culture, you know how hard it is. You're never good enough.
Mhm.
You're being primed for Asian perfection.
Uh-huh.
And what we're taught is that our value and our worthiness is tied to whatever accomplishment and marker we hit. But whatever accomplishment and marker we hit is never enough. It's like, oh, then you got to go to the next level. Oh, then you should go to grad school. Oh, then you should become a PhD. Then you should become a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist, you know?
Exactly.
I don't see a lot of authenticity there.
There isn't.
Right?
And I think it's because we were never taught to be ourselves. We were never encouraged to just show up as us. We always had to show up as the perfect daughter, as the perfect student, you know, so that they could be proud of you.
Exactly, because their pride was a reflection that they did a great job.
Exactly.
Parenting us, and they could tell all the relatives what a great job they did.
Exactly. Exactly. It was never about us.
It was never about us. And what was so striking to me was how unconscious I was, because I thought that I was happy, but I was lost the entire time. I didn't even know who I was, because you know what? I was whoever you wanted me to be.
Yes.
You want me to be the volunteer and be involved in PTA? I'm on that. Oh, you want me to be the swim team mom? Okay, I got that. Oh, you want me to be the corporate executive wife? I'm really good at that one.
Yeah,
you know?
that was fun.
All these masks. And I was such a chameleon, like I didn't even know who was myself, because I was just whoever you expected me to be.
Exactly. And you know what was hard about that, at least for me, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there, a lot of women out there that can maybe identify with this, is because we put a label on ourselves as mother, daughter, wife, whatever. When we lose that label, like when my kids started leaving, they didn't need mom anymore. And because I was that for so long, when the mom label was removed, it's like, now what? Who am I? What am I supposed to do at this point? Because all I know is how to be a stay-at-home mom, and like you know, be PTA secretary, be the driver so that they can go to all their sports events.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when it's just they leave it to us, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do anymore. And then you feel so guilty when you do something for yourself.
Oh my gosh, the guilt. Like that's
Another show.
because if you're programmed for Asian perfection and you're programmed to be what other people want you to be, the messaging was that you have to always put others before yourself. My parents' expectations trumped my own desires.
Yeah.
Or whatever. My boss's expectations, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I was never shown that it was healthy to choose myself and put myself first, ever.
No.
And if I did go to the mall, I was always buying stuff for the kids or my husband. Like I had such a low sense of self and such a low or a high, I guess, unworthiness quotient. I didn't think I deserved it because if I took it, I was taking away from the family. So family first, right?
Yeah.
So, when you have kids, their needs were all that mattered, that they had all the gear, that they had the instruments, that they, as I was trying to churn out Asian perfection and repeat the patterns. And then, here's the difference. My kids were like not having it.
Wow.
Absolutely not.
Whoa.
Like I'd be like, get in there and study for finals. Oh, we fought. Our house was a war zone. Like I'd be like, get in there and study for finals. And I would just hear the amps like cranked up and all this electric guitar. And I'd be like screaming, like playing guitar, video gaming, like just like, they were not having it. They were not interested.
Interesting. Yeah, that was my middle child.
They triggered me hard. And part of our soul contract that I realize now, having come this far on my soul journey and my ascension journey, was those two boys basically saying F you when I was trying to shove them in that Asian perfection box, were the catalyst for my awakening.
Yeah.
That was our soul contract, and those triggers and the reinforced triggers of just being like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not going to pretend to be Asian perfection when the grandparents come. We're actually going to get in trouble while they're visiting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Wow.
School calls and goes, oh, your son is being suspended when my parents are there. I'm like, wow, I think I'm just going to like
crawl under a rock now.
Because the whole family's going to hear about this, and there's going to be all bars and all this talking about it and what a shitty parent I am. And there's so much angst that I experienced alone because I didn't have anyone to talk to. I don't know if you had similar.
Oh yeah, exactly. I did for sure. My kids for the most part fell into my because I was so mean. I was such a
you scared them in. They were scared straight.
Exactly. Like if I just said, their name, they're like, yeah, okay, what is it? What do you want me to do? And my husband was the same way too. He's like, okay, just don't get angry. Throwing things. I was horrible. But I recognized that I was my mom.
Yes. Isn't that the worst when you have that aha moment and you're like, oh my God, I swore I would not be my mom and the words would be coming out of my mouth.
Exactly. That's why I didn't have any daughters, because my mom cursed me and said, I hope you have a daughter that's just like you.
Oh my God.
And that's why I didn't have any girls. But my middle child definitely triggered me. But he was my catalyst.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely get it. And then later, after the awakening and ascending and becoming who I am and the better version of who I am, I look back and it's like, gosh, if I only knew these things earlier, maybe my kids wouldn't have suffered as much. But I know that everything happened the way it was supposed to.
It's a soul contract, right? We're triggering their growth and they're triggering our growth. And there's the symbiotic relationship with all of our relationships, whether it's with our husbands, our parents, our siblings, our children. I also had those same regrets. Like, I didn't start this path till my youngest son was away at college. So their whole childhood was a product of that programming. And now all this time I've been just modeling a different way.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe me for a long time that I still wasn't trying to control them, because their whole life I had tried to control them. And I mean, now they know. I'm just like, it's your path, whatever.
Yeah. And that must have been really difficult for your kids, right? Because they grew up a certain way. They were programmed and conditioned that you were going to respond a certain way. And then all of a sudden you're like, it's your journey. And they're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. They both called my husband.
What's happening?
They both called my husband and they're like, what's wrong with mom? Like, what's her trip? Like, what is going on? Is she okay?
Exactly.
Like, everybody was like, she's changed and we're not really sure about this whole spiritual bullshit.
Yeah.
And they're like not on board with it. I'm like, no, I'm a better person. Trust me.
Exactly. But in an Asian culture, we were told or taught that we can't change, that there is no ascension, that there is no evolution, that this is how you are, and this is how you will be for the rest of your life, and this is how you will be known as. And so I challenged that because I stopped the anger, I stopped the yelling, I stopped the throwing and all these things.
What was it like for you to kind of allow yourself to find inner peace and to just stop it, just stop it all? Like, what was that transition like? That must have been...
my dad still doesn't believe me. He still thinks I'm the old version of me. And so he's like ready for the battle, right? And I'm like, peace, love, and harmony. He's like, what? What's going on?
Maybe they just keep trying to come at you, and you keep stepping back. Like, they keep coming forward and you keep stepping back, and you're like,
and I just, it's like, surrender. You know what? This is about you. This issue that you're creating is about you, and it's not about me. And I'm not going to pick up that ball anymore. Yeah. I have been picking up that ball all my life, or most of my life, and it was never fun. I never wanted to play those games, but I was forced to. Mm-hmm. So to be able to step back and accept them for who they are, it made my life more peaceful in a lot of ways. But at the same time, too, created a different set of challenges, because now our parents are trying to get us, well, my parents are trying to get me to be the old version, even though the old version really sucked, to be quite honest.
I think it's really hard because also they think they know you. Yeah. But they know the 18-year-old version of you.
Right.
They think that's who you are. And I'm not that anymore. I'm so far. I mean, that was 5,000 versions of me ago that I slayed and let go as I, did my inner work and inner healing. And one thing I realized was it was never about anybody but me.
Yeah, that's right.
It was about them triggering me for my own evolution. Again, a soul contract. And they gave me the tenacity and the strength and the attitude and the ability to stand alone out front and have the strength not to care if people believed me or supported me or not. I wouldn't have this courage and strength if I had not been a product of that upbringing.
Right. But you had the know-how or the mindset that you didn't want to be that anymore, and that you wanted it to stop with you. Like, the abuse stopped with me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I didn't discipline my kids. Of course, I grounded them and I yelled at them, but I didn't abuse them. I never hit them the way my parents. I don't think I've never even hit my kids.
Right.
Because the abuse that I went through was really hard. It was rough. And so I didn't want that. So I'm grateful, like what you were saying. I am who I am because of them, because of their triggers, because of the lessons they taught me. And the what I didn't want to be. They showed me what I didn't want to
Right.
be.
So, I mean, the programming was, it's like, okay, we've lived that and that's really not aligned with who we are.
Right.
So I'm gonna go a different way. I'm actually gonna follow my heart,
Yeah.
which was
And
never
they're probably
safe.
like, what?
Yeah,
What is
that was never a safe space.
Mm-mm.
I really longed to have emotional connection with my mom, like deep, like, you know how you see these mother daughters that like
Oh, that's all fake.
their BFFs, they trips, they bond, they just
I know.
are so vulnerable, and I'm just like, wow, I wish that was, something. My mom's all business, to this day. I
Yeah.
mean, she loves me. I love her. I love
Sure.
her deeply. We have a very beautiful relationship now. Most of my life, I was just fighting for my freedom.
Yeah.
I was fighting. I was fighting for I didn't realize that my whole life I was fighting for myself.
Yeah.
I was
That's
fighting to find
both
myself.
resonates. Mm-hmm.
And I was curious when was the point that you actually realized I broke it? I broke out of that program. I'm not that anymore. What was that like to find yourself after all these years?
Oh my gosh. I don't even, I never really thought about it. So that's a really good question. It feels like it just happened very, the slight little changes and shifts that compounded became, who I am now. But all I can say to that is there was there was a sense of so much release, lightness when I surrendered to it all. I've been reading books about surrendering, and I never really fully understood or felt what that could have been until I was able to look back to see how far I've come. But
Yeah.
I would probably say it maybe the last 5 or 6 years is really when I've noticed that shift, that stuck, that clicked into place and was really the beginning of my life.
Yeah.
Because I was living it for me for once instead of living it for.
Was it hard for you to live it without guilt?
In the beginning, it was really hard. And
Yeah.
even now, I think there's still some moments where I feel guilty for maybe not doing more for something. But then I step back and it's like, you know what? No, it feels good to not do it. It feels good to do these things for me. So that's totally in alignment.
And how did you change your relationship with money? Because that was such a physically enforced and deeply ingrained program. How did you alchemize that? That's pretty masterful.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of healing for sure, healing on myself, um, understanding what the triggers are and writing down some of the statements, and I would check to see if certain statements resonated for me, like money is evil. Well, that rang true in my brain. So I cleared energy around me so that I didn't feel that money was evil, but it took probably 6 months
Of
with
consciously working on that.
exactly. And when that finally took hold and I was able to clear a lot of stuff within 6 months, I'm telling you, I don't know, hopefully I can say this. I came into like $250,000 within 6 months.
Wow, what?
And I was like, this crap works. It's not all hype.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
just got better and better from there. Because money, for me, money's just an effect. That's all it is. Money is an effect for everybody. But
Well, it's all energetic, right? It's just an energetic exchange. And I think people focus so much on attaining money
Mhm.
rather than looking at it. Like for me, everything shifted financially for me when I changed my relationship with money. It wasn't currency, okay? It was energy. So
Exactly.
for me, energy is always flowing.
Flowing.
So I stopped being mindful of what I spend and I just started letting go.
Yeah.
go of money. And I had some, really pivotal financial lessons to force me to let go of money. Like about 4 years ago, my dog had a really bad pancreatitis emergency and had to go to animal ER, and it was like $4,000 because he had to stay there for 3 days. And I was like, I don't care what it costs. Like you know, driving over there, I'm like, oh my God, Mike, what's this going to cost? And then my dog is like dying in my lap on the ride. And I'm like, Mike, I don't care how much this dog costs me. We're saving his life. I don't care how much it is, And I was just like, here's my credit card, whatever. I mean, I had these life moments, right? Life kind of presents these opportunities for us to let go.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is we're holding on to, abandonment or money or whatever we're holding on to, life is going to keep presenting opportunities to force us to let go of it.
Exactly. And you really have your faith is tested in those moments, right? And I think about the story Jack and the Beanstalk, right? Jack spent his last few bits of coin to buy these magic beans, but really what he did in that moment was he walked in faith that that was going to be his, because he did that, he was going to be able to help his family. Mm-hmm. Right. And what did his parents do? My Asian parents, of course, they say you're stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You wasted it. And I'm thinking, was Jack and the Beast, was it created in the Philippines or something? Write it over there, because that's exactly what my parents, oh, you're so stupid, Ressel. Magic beans. Even now, like I made a decent living. My dad says I'm a ghost whisperer. No, I'm not like a medium, but I can hear spirit still, right? And I've made a good living, with this. And my dad still to this day doesn't believe that people will pay for energy healing, for Marconics. He goes, those are stupid people then. It's like, okay, well, they're all doing better. No, they're not, Ressel. They're just lying to you to make you feel better. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. Send more my way.
The old Ressel would have been wounded by that. And you're like, peace out, Dad. Okay. You believe whatever you want to believe. Well, I told you that when I kind of came forward to tell my family, I'm doing energy healing. They called my husband and they were like, do we need to fly out there?
Intervention
right now and put her in a facility.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, they were like, you know what? I think she needs to be evaluated. I think we're going to get on a plane. You just tell us we're there. We're there tonight. And we can put her in a facility.
My goodness.
And here I'm living like my best life. I'm just, I finally found my life's purpose as a life coach, as a energy healer. I'm changing people's lives. Like I'm getting so much feedback. People are flying here from all over the country to work with me. And my parents were like, I think.
And they probably still don't believe that.
What I think now it's been so many years and they've seen my success.
Okay.
In terms that they could relate to, right? Like financial. I'm in magazines, I get on podcasts. There's like something they can tangibly hold on to that says, oh, she's actually successful.
Yes.
She did a book tour. She's successful, So
I didn't just write it in Kindle, you know what I mean?
Right.
This is like a real book.
It's a real thing. It's a thing that they could hold on to because it was such a foreign thing. It's like, no, you must be insane.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Absolutely. Exactly. My dad wonders how we're able to make the mortgage payment and the car payments. He's like, you don't have a job. I go, Dad, I have my business. Oh, business is not a job. It isn't. I'm so confused right now. Talking to him, it's so exhausting. Talking to my parents because they're still.
Well, they're in a very, they're in AM radio. I always talk about,
they are
right? We're in
Absolutely.
satellite, and if you're dealing with people in AM radio, you might as well be talking to the wall because they cannot hear you. They do not
Exactly.
hear you, and it's
You're right.
hard.
Yeah.
So, I've just learned to talk about the weather,
Superficial things.
things that are safe for the kids.
Right.
I'm not
Exactly.
really, I don't go deep into the reality of my world,
Yeah.
of energy alchemy, of quantum
Oh,
creating, of
you can't.
living in the quantum field and
Mhm.
really manifesting and being the master creator of my life. I talk about, the kids. My
You only
dog.
talk about them for so long, and then it gets so
It's the same
boring.
conversation, but we're connecting. It's the same
After they take them
conversation.
shopping, they're fine.
Now we have a new baby, so we
That's
talk about the
right.
baby, the grandbaby. So
Okay.
it's safe topics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Because if we ever got into a topic about me talking to dead people, it's really funny because my mom and dad would tease me about talking to dead people. And, my mom was almost embarrassed when her and I would have conversations about it. Well, I'm at a party, a family reunion, and all of a sudden my mom, Ressel, come here, talk to your auntie. And I'm like, why? I told them you talk to dead people. So can you do a group reading for everybody here?
What?
I'm like, what? You're the one that was like shaming me for doing that. Now, like there's like 20 people that want a reading.
God.
Yeah. So I think in their own way, they show their pride in us, but not necessarily to our face,
Correct.
because they don't want us to get like a big head. But I do feel like they are they are like proud of us.
Well, I feel like we're living our best lives and we're showing them how to have courage and be authentic,
Right.
speak our truth, and not be put in a box.
Right.
I've fought my whole life for myself,
Yeah.
to find myself, to heal myself, to elevate myself. And it wasn't going to come from pleasing everyone and being the person everyone else told me to be.
Right.
It had to come from me having the spirit that I have, you having the spirit that you have within you that was fighting for you,
Absolutely.
to break free of all the programs and paradigms and all the bullshit that were told was true, which wasn't.
No.
It wasn't true. Here's
Yeah,
a news flash. You get to decide what's true for you.
that's right. Oh, but don't ever say that to your parents or the church. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to choose you. And I'm going to tell you, it's so worth it on the other side to be able to be ourselves completely authentic
Mhm.
and free and work with integrity with the people
Yeah,
that we work with and really show up for humanity and in service the way we were meant to. Because we
exactly.
could have easily said, no, I'm just going to be in this box and live this very limited life.
Right. That's true. And we didn't even know that we were limiting ourselves, right? Because we
No,
were never encouraged to think for ourselves. We were only taught what to think, not how to think.
exactly. Exactly. But don't you feel like you got a lot of your inner strength from your childhood, as hard as it was?
Yes. A lot of lessons, a lot of experiences. We don't know what it feels like to get up if we've never fallen, right? So all my life I was kicked down, and then to finally stand up for myself, you know the difference. You
Yeah.
feel the difference. You don't know what good feels like if you've never felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I give my parents, their due, their
They
props.
played their role perfectly for you.
Absolutely, they did, and they're still giving me more experiences to learn from, for sure. But now I'm able to laugh at a lot of it.
I
So,
think your
just
detachment
back.
is masterful, and being able to step back and understand that. I think having done all our inner work and clearing so much, we can see the programming and how it's created their responses to us.
Yes.
It's not because they don't have heart. It's not because they don't love us. It's because they were programmed to view life through a very specific lens.
Absolutely.
And that's all they know.
Exactly. And so I can't fault them for that, you know. But I tell them too, you know, you have a choice on certain things. They're like, no, we don't. But that's their programming. They think they don't have a choice.
Right.
And so it's okay. Like you were saying, it's that detachment is the most freeing thing.
I think it also gives us compassion.
It does.
You know, and what I learned too is we all agreed to this. We all agreed to be these players for each other and triggers for each other.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that was what allowed me to let go of a lot of resentment and anger towards different family members that I really hated in my life. You know, we all have those, right? The people that just trigger the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I had relatives that were just like, I have zero tolerance for you. And even if my face had a smile, my energy was saying F you.
Oh, yeah. And aren't you
not good at hiding, like masking
energy? Could you imagine if they had our gifts?
No, it'd be dangerous.
Oh gosh.
It'd be dangerous. But I was able to finally sit down and go, wow, all of this, every single triggered person triggering me was a soul contract and an agreement that they were going to help me master this aspect of myself.
That's right.
Because they were mirroring my insecurities, my unworthiness, my whatever that needed to be healed constantly. And isn't it ironic how the moment we heal ourselves, it kind of fades a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we heal ourselves, we unknowingly start healing the people around us too, because they respond differently to us because we're different.
Right. I was going to ask you how your relationship with Steve has changed through your evolution.
It's a lot better, that's for sure, because I'm not the Incredible Hulk as often as I was. But it forced him to change too. Now, this is what's interesting. Before I detached, I felt like I was going to change him so that he can evolve, so that he can ascend, and he fought me tooth and nail because he didn't want to change, because I think he didn't necessarily believe me either. Like your kids, they didn't believe that you were different.
Right.
And the moment I said, you know what, it's your journey. You do what you want to do. I'm just letting you know that I'm going to keep ascending and I'm going to keep reaching for that better version of me. I'd love for you to stay in my life, but if not, no worries. And when that conversation happened with, I'm not going to force you to change because I'm not in the convincing business. Right. I am living my best life. I am the happiest I've ever been. Yeah. But if you're not going to walk with me, that's okay too, right? But because of that conversation, he started to do the inner work.
Right.
He started reaching for the better version of him, and he is a completely different person than he was 10, 15 years ago.
I think it's so incredible. And I had the same conversation with my husband.
Oh, really?
Like, you know what? That's okay. And that's the thing, I think that's hard for them too. We're not like angry. We're not forcing. We're like, you know what? There's just this level of surrender. Like, I love you so much that I'll let you go.
Exactly.
If you can't entrain with me and walk this path with me, and I'm not saying you have to be me. You don't have to be on this spiritual path.
Exactly.
But
it wasn't an open
to have self-awareness, and you do have to do your inner work if you're going to walk with me and we're going to journey together through life. If you're not willing to evolve and ascend with me, we can't. The frequencies will just be so discordant that it's just not going to work. And so I'm so grateful that on some conscious or unconscious level, my sons and my husband have come together and done a lot of their own inner work, and we have come to such a beautiful place of unity and love as a family, to a level I never thought we could get to. But I think when one person starts to heal, that ripples out, like you said, to the family.
Yes, absolutely. And we attract different things. When we are a higher version of ourselves, we raise our frequency and our vibration. Well, there's better things up at the top. Right? It's you want to stay away from the bottom feeders.
Right. The drama and the chaos, right?
Exactly. And even just a little bit of drama, I can feel it. And I just, it's like, clear that. I don't need to be that. Obviously, something's showing up. Let me take a look at it. I mean, I view challenges very differently now, as opposed to why is this happening to me? The question now is, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Right.
What's the lesson in this so that I don't have to keep repeating it? Doesn't mean that I'm successful 100% of the time.
But I think awareness is really powerful for us, because we can actually, work and alchemize the energy of it. We know how to do that. We've been doing this for a long time. And so I know, especially for somebody who never did vulnerability, for me to go, oh, there's my ego again. There's that bitch again showing up. I need to work this out, was huge for me, because if you don't do vulnerability, if you're always armored up, you cannot move higher and ascend on your path. You have to get real with yourself, so real that you want to cry, because you're like, oh God, I don't want to look at this.
You have to have that willingness to see yourself fully and in the truth, right?
And
not
it.
different versions.
Own it.
What you want to see. Yeah, exactly. Own it. Very true. Yeah, I didn't grow up with that word ego. It wasn't until, past 7-8 years. And it's like, I just thought it was that waffle, right? Eggo waffle. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had no clue.
Ressel, you're so funny. I'm so glad that we found each other. Yeah. I'm so glad that we have become friends and that we've been able to support each other on the journey, because we were talking about this earlier. It's a solo journey. You finding yourself, you reaching for your higher self and connecting to your higher self. It's you leading you. No one can do it for you. No one can make the choices for you. You have to want it, and you have to be willing to make the sacrifices and let go of all the attachments to align and connect.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest obstacle, is people are holding on to all these attachments for whatever reason, whether it's programming or fear or whatever it is. All those attachments are limitations.
Yes, they are. And just because it's familiar doesn't mean that it's right.
I think people really fight for their limitations.
They absolutely do. I remember the first coaching, maybe it was the second, I can't remember, when you coached me and I was telling you all these things that I couldn't do. And you're like, well, Ressel, if you fight for your limitations, you're going to be able to keep them. I'm like, oh, that bitch was right. And at that point, I knew we were going to be friends.
I have it's one of my roles, which has been one of the hardest ones, has been that I trigger people. I trigger people hard. And the people who are able to take the trigger and really look at it, elevate so much, and they're the ones that stay in my life. And then there's the people I trigger that send me the 18 paragraph text and are like, this friendship is over. I don't even mean to. It's like I'll just be talking and all of a sudden someone's really triggered and Mike's like, another friend. You lost another friend. I'm like, yeah. He goes, man, your list is getting really small. I go, yeah, babe, it's me and you at this point, and the kids and the dog. Are like dropping like flies because
My goodness.
they don't realize their triggers are their wounds are their work. They think I'm a bitch, I'm not even trying to trigger someone. I'm talking and my energy, it's like energetic.
Exactly. And that's okay. You know what?
Well, you're still here, so thank you.
Yeah, for now. I don't know what happened.
Until I piss you
off next month.
Tomorrow. But I'm kind of used to it. I've even asked my team myself at Source. I'm like, why? They're like, you agreed to this. You agreed to play this role. This was your path, and there's a reason.
Yeah.
You have to keep showing up as yourself, and how people receive you is not your problem.
It's not. Exactly. It's on them.
It is. I want to ask you to share some tools that helped you move through a lot of these really hard times.
Gosh, I think one of the tools that I use is to detach from the situation. And I've learned to be able to look at the experience, not just through my set of eyes, but through other people's set of eyes, and even beyond that, like an observer's viewpoint, because each of our truths are different depending on how we're looking at it. And then always asking myself too, my higher self, what is the lesson in this? What am I supposed to get out of this? How can I evolve? I realize that the quality of the answer that we get from our higher self is dependent on the quality of the questions that you ask. Because
that's so good.
Right? Because if you keep asking, why is this happening? Well, it's just going to keep happening more and more and more until you ask a different question. Mm-hmm. So I say, probably the biggest takeaway for me was that detachment and believing that there's something down the road, and picking up those breadcrumbs as they're being thrown out in front of you, so.
That's great advice. I think following the synchronicities and the clues is so critical.
Yeah.
And that detachment I did not realize how powerful that was on the path.
So true.
But to be able to zoom out, take a higher perspective, not engage, not react, step back,
exactly.
Be quiet. That was a big one for me. I have a mouth. I used to love to fight, and I'm gonna win, by the way.
Oh,
I was a fighter, not ego. Like my husband, I'm surprised we're still married. That man is very patient. He just knew, like, don't engage. You will lose.
Wow. Good to know.
Not like that anymore. Now I'm so it took them all a while, like my kids and my husband, to really believe me. Like, you can win. You win, whatever.
Yeah. And when you do that, when you surrender for the first time and you say, you know what, I don't want to fight, you're right. And they're like, no, because they're expecting the battle.
The program response, right?
Exactly. They're like, well, why are you angry? And I'm like, I just told you I'm surrendering, I'm giving up, you're correct. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what? No, we're still gonna fight for another 20 minutes.
Or it's like, it's okay, we can have different opinions. Like, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. It's all good, whatever. I still love you, whatever.
Yeah. And they still don't believe us. They're like, no, you don't.
It took a while. It took years, to finally realize that this is who I really am now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that we were able to share some tidbits of helpful information for my audience. My audience, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Be kind to yourselves. And I love y'all.